Welcome, everybody, to the Competitiveness Improvement Project Informational Workshop for 2024, even though we're in 2023, the year 2023 now. So thank you all for joining. We've got a great couple of days of kind of informational sessions here, and we'll get into that in just a second. I'm Ian Baring-Gould at NREL and have been kind of a lead of the CIP project for a long time with a fabulous crew of folks here at NREL, and handing off that title to Brent Summerville for this next round, which is also great. But before we dive into it, I want to introduce Bret Barker from the Department of Energy, the Wind Energy Technology Office, to lead us in. Obviously, this is a Wind Energy Technology Office program that's implemented by NREL, but it's definitely the brainchild of the wind program and the Department of Energy, and is a key program for supporting the distributed wind manufacturers. So I would like Brent, who has been a longtime supporter of the technology and a longtime leader within this area, to give us a quick introduction and lead in. So over to you, Brent.
Great, thanks, Ian. Just a quick sound check. You guys got me all right?
Yep, we've got you.
All right, fabulous. So yes, as Ian mentioned, my name's Bret Barker. I'm a program manager supporting the Wind Energy Technologies Office, and I help lead our efforts in the distributed wind program. So yeah, again, welcome and thank you for joining us, and thank you for your interest in the Competitiveness Improvement Project, or CIP, as we call it at DOE and NREL. As Ian mentioned, the CIP is funded by DOE's Wind Energy Technologies Office under the Distributed Wind Program, and the Wind Energy Technologies Office views distributed wind, or wind technologies applied as a distributed energy resource, as a critical technology for enabling energy transition at the local level. Because small and medium scale wind turbine technologies, or those under 1 megawatt in capacity, are exclusively used in distributed applications, they're the primary focus of the distributed wind program. And the CIP is our flagship initiative for advancing next generation small and medium scale wind energy systems. The CIP is open to all design concepts. So this includes, but it's not limited to, conventional horizontal axis designs and less conventional vertical axis ducted and airborne, and really everything in between. It's intentionally designed to be open for all design concepts. The CIP supports small businesses at every step of the product development process, from pre-prototype design concept through commercialization. And as I mentioned, CIP is administered by NREL on behalf of DOE, and I want to thank the NREL team for organizing this workshop, and really for their dedication to continuously working to make CIP more accessible and more impactful for industry. You may have noticed that there was no CIP solicitation in 2023. Because we received so many meritorious proposals in 2022, we made a programmatic decision to fund as many proposals as possible with our fiscal year 2022 and 2023 appropriations. We also used this pause as an opportunity to reconsider CIP. And if you could just go on mute, I'm getting a little feedback, a little echo on my end. Thank you. So yeah, we also use this pause as an opportunity to reconsider the CIP, including an industry workshop to get your feedback this past spring. Changes to the program are highlighted by a concept paper phase, topic area refinement, and an increased emphasis on diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. The workshop today and this week is really your opportunity to learn about how CIP has been remodeled. And if you're new to CIP, the workshop's designed to teach you how to effectively leverage the program. So really consider this a CIP 101 or a how to CIP course. And with that, I want to thank you again for your participation and interest. And again, thank the NREL team for their efforts in preparing the workshop materials. And with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Ian.
Great, thank you so much, Brett.
Yeah, thank you.
Some really quick things. Because we don't have time to do kind of around the room introduction with everybody here, please go ahead and in the chat, put in your name, your company's website, other kind of contact information, and anything short you want to say about your company and why you're interested in CIP. One of the problems about doing a meeting like this virtually as compared to all getting together in the same room is that it does not allow the kind of collaboration that we would have gotten if we were in one place. I think it does give a lot more opportunity for people to partake, but using the chat as a way to engage with people and set up side meetings and things of that nature would certainly be encouraged. So please go ahead and drop that kind of information in here so that we get a better sense, not just we at DOE and NREL get a better sense of who's here, but so that all of you get a sense of who's on the call and whether there are interests in partnering, working on projects and things of that nature. A quick overview of the agenda for today's session, or for this week's session. We're broken into 3 days, trying to keep it pretty manageable for everybody. Today is pretty much an overview of the different project areas within CIP. And so we've got this kind of introduction, an overview that Brent will give, and then we'll dive into all of the topic areas that were covered in the 2022 CIP with different presenters talking about those different topical areas. And then at the end, we'll have a more detailed discussion of electrical standards from Joe Spossey of RE Innovations. That's certainly a key issue that CIP is working to address is how do we make sure the technology that comes through this project will meet all the certification requirements for the small wind industry, which is getting much more complicated as we look at electrical requirements. The next day, looking a little bit more at the technical standards for turbines, some work on test site and site certification requirements. So really delving into this question of certification to make sure that as you look at your products, but then also as you look for certification, you're engaging and are really knowledgeable around the certification requirements. And then a last thing on within CIP are requirements for design review and evaluation. So Brent will follow up tomorrow on that. And then the last day is around contracting. And so what are the contracting requirements? Some of the design tools that are out there that are required or certainly encouraged within the certification requirements. And then we'll have some time for some kind of open dialogue around other considerations and discussion of concept papers, improvements, and things of that nature on the third day, on Thursday. And then lastly, on Friday, we're planning a kind of an open house office hours for CIP. So if you have kind of specific questions about CIP or about where your technology fits within CIP and things of that nature, we encourage you to engage on Friday in those dialogues. And so to facilitate that, send an email to Brent or put it in the chat that you would like to set up a call for Friday, and we'll schedule those calls out so that everybody doesn't hang out for those. But want to make sure that we're available to answer more detailed questions than the general ones that are going to be more applicable for the 3 general sessions. So with that in mind, so just some kind of where we are within CIP. And Brett already covered the first 2 of these. We had no solicitation 2023, and we had a good feedback session, really trying to improve the CIP that happened this spring, and we've implemented a number of those activities here. What Brett didn't mention was this final one, is that there was a notice, a special notice that was issued by NREL. You can see it there, or you can find links to it. But it did state that we have the intent to release a request for a proposal for CIP early in 2024. Of course, that's no guarantee that one will be released, but it's letting everybody know that it's coming. And as folks who have been engaged in CIP in the past will all tell you, don't wait around for the RFP to come out. It's definitely worth starting to get your ducks in order, engaging with certification folks and others well prior to the RFP coming out. Historically speaking, there have been about 4 weeks for you to develop a proposal to submit, and that time goes by very quickly. So again, would strongly encourage folks who are interested in putting in a proposal to start thinking about that and engaging with potential partners around that now. And then once and if a request for proposal does come out in early 2024, then you'll be ahead of the curve. So other considerations to think about as you start looking at this. Just to be very clear, any of the information covered today is relative to past CIP efforts and should not be assumed to be considered for any future or potential offerings. So again, we're legally bound not to talk about a potential solicitation, but we're free and open to talk about historical ones. And obviously, as we all know, history is a good guide for the future. So no guarantees, but CIP has been a successful program for the way it's been run. And so we don't expect lots of changes, but we won't certainly guarantee it. On that second bullet, just stating again, we cannot talk about future solicitations, but we certainly can provide guidance based on the back one on previous ones, which is what you'll get for the next couple of days here. If there is a call for proposals, once that call is released, NREL and DOE staff that are engaged in that process will not be able to talk to you about any potential CIP proposal that you might want to pull together. So again, I strongly encourage you to reach out for the sessions on Friday, but then also if you have questions over the next couple of months, now is the time to engage. And obviously we can't tell you how to develop a proposal for a potential future RFP, but we can certainly give you guidance based on historical CIP requests for proposals that have gone out and help you develop, kind of give you guidance, talk about what would be applicable. And the new concept paper that Brent will introduce a little bit later really tries to get into providing early feedback to you about potential submissions. So again, all of that has to happen before an RFP is released, if one is released, because once that happens, we will not be able to engage with you about any dialogue around a potential proposal that you might be thinking about. If you're interested in being placed on the distribution list for CIP so that when information comes out, you see the email right there, CIP2024@nrel.gov, and that goes to our contract administrator, Kendall Jackson, who you'll get to hear from on Thursday. But we'll put you on the list so that if anything happens, we'll let you know. And then always we keep the CIP website up to date with any information. So that's another good place to keep tabs on. It also has a lot of great examples of previous CIP awards and other information. So if you're interested, I would highly encourage you to take a look there. So really quickly, just a little bit of housekeeping about the workshop. Please mute yourself, and I think everybody has done that unless you're talking. Please post questions in the chat or raise your hands when we get to that, and we'll ask you to kind of ask your questions. We'll try to get to everybody, but again, our time is somewhat limited. And with that in mind, really try to keep any questions that you have really specific to kind of the question that you have, but then also into the material that are covering today. Diving into your technology or diving into what topic area should I submit for, that kind of stuff is not applicable. It's not really appropriate for this open discussion with everybody here. That's stuff that we're happy to talk to you about, but let's do that on Friday or as a follow-on session. Let's not dive into any specifics along those lines. But if you have specifics about any of the topical areas or the stuff that we're covering, please go ahead and ask that question. Make sure to introduce yourself when you ask your question so that we get a little bit of information about you as you dive into that. And then just turning back to this kind of idea that all of the responses that we give are based on our expertise, but do not necessarily and should not be considered as gospel in regards to a potential CIP that might come out in the future. We will, if and when a CIP does come out, there will be an opportunity to ask specific questions around that CIP in a very formal way.
Hi, Ian, one quick thing. I just created a sheet for everybody. Whoever wants to share their information, they can put in that. So it's just a voluntarily, I posted the link. So that's for everybody. Thanks.
Okay, great. Thank you for that.
Okay.
And that gets into this last bullet here. So we can't facilitate lots of cross industry dialogue, but filling in that sheet or making yourself available through the chat to other folks is a way to do that. So would certainly encourage you. So really quickly, any questions, kind of overview, top of the line questions for either Brett or myself? Happy to do that now before we move on to Brent giving a presentation on kind of an overview of CIP where we are now.
Just one quick thing I put in the chat.
Go ahead, Heather.
With the introductions, it would be wonderful if people could also put their pronouns. And I put a little link on why that's important. And also your land acknowledgement. So either where you are today, where your main office is, and there's a different tool from last time that hopefully should work better. So you can learn more about the traditional historic use of the land. And I think that's just best practice for starting a big meeting like this with introductions. Another little thing in addition to the Google Sheet, that's great. But if you have a LinkedIn page, you can post that. And is there going to be a LinkedIn group for this CIP in general?
Yeah, so we're moving forwards in developing a LinkedIn group for CIP again to kind of spur this cross-industry collaboration. So it is not up and running yet, but as soon as it is, we'll be sending that out to everybody who would like to join it. So thank you, Heather, and yes, we are remiss for not doing that. We're here at NREL on historical lands of the Paiute and Cheyenne, and recognize their title or their ancestral land rights here in Colorado.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Great. Hand this off. Oh, sorry. Was there a question there?
I have a patent on a new technology, I believe it's called new industry. And it covers pretty much anything that is energy power.
Okay, could you quickly introduce yourself first? And then
sorry. I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Fidel Ochoa from Perpetual Motors LLC, Tempe, Arizona.
Great.
I think we have developed a new industry we're working on, and the wind turbine that we have on the drawing board, it's a no wind turbine.
Okay. Do you have so this I think is a perfect example of a way to kind of put information in the chat about your company, including a link to any kind of material that you have. But if you have kind of specific, if you want to talk specifically about your technology and how it may or may not be applicable for development through CIP, having a conversation
Yeah,
on Friday or at some point next week would be perfect. We'd love to see a little bit more about what you're doing, and see how it might be applicable.
I'm open. That's why I'm speaking up now.
Great.
You know, it is, I have a non-provisional patent on it.
Great.
But yeah, how can we communicate whenever you have time?
I would think, Brent, do you want to look for a time on Friday that it might make sense to chat?
Yeah, Fidel. I'll have a slide on it later, but you can email me, request the meeting, and I'm setting up meetings during our office hours on Friday.
So the email is right there on the NREL right now on questions.
Not yet, but I'll have a slide on this and I'll have my email up there, Brent Summerville.
Or you could send it to me, the second one, and I'll loop in Brent. That
Yep.
would be easy as well.
Can I ask
Okay.
a quick question if it hasn't already been asked?
Go ahead.
Will you be sharing the presentations at the end of the 3 days with the group?
So yes, great question. So we will be sharing the presentations as well as a recording of this. It will take us a little bit of time to do that because we have to go through a formal process. But yes, the presentations will all be shared as well as a recording, a full recording and transcript of this discussion. You can go back, they're already online is the one from 2 years ago. And this is obviously updated a bit, but a lot of the material from 2 years ago is still applicable. And those slides and that recording is available linked from our website right now.
Thanks.
Great. All right, over to you.
Thank you, Ian and Brett, for the welcome. I appreciate that.
Oh, certainly.
My screen is looking at my native land. So let me share this overview of CIP. Thanks everyone for joining. We've got over 50 folks here, so we're always happy to see the interest and excited to at the great possibility of a round, another solicitation coming up. So I'm just going to give an overview of competitiveness improvement project, followed by an overview of the topic areas. And then we'll have a little break and switch over to electrical safety standard listing from Joe Spossey today. Okay, so the challenges that the distributed wind energy market opportunities are significant, and with some of the latest federal incentives and policy changes, they're probably considered vast. To realize this potential, the industry has required some rapid innovation to compete with lower cost distributed generation technologies. And we're still in the game here with CIP, helping to boost the industry and meet our potential. And distributed wind companies are typically small businesses with limited resources. So we're happy to have this program where we could assist in product advancement, moving through the product development cycle. So with the support of the Department of Energy, Wind Energy Technologies Office, NREL's offering this competitive cost shared solicitation for manufacturers of small and medium turbines. And we say, and like Brett said, while small, medium, and large turbines are installed in distributed applications, covering all of the distributed wind market, we're focusing on the needs of the small and medium wind technology. The large technology is dipping in both the utility scale and the distributed wind markets, and they receive quite a bit of R&D support, and we're focusing on the smaller scale technology here to optimize designs, invest in advanced component development, implement some advanced manufacturing processes, help certify turbines, and support commercialization of the technology. So the objectives are to expand the U.S. leadership in the domestic and export international distributed wind turbine sector by, we still focus on technology cost, although we've broadened our viewpoint of impacts beyond just the cost of energy. We support product innovation, optimization of wind turbines for distributed applications, Really, the goal at the end of the development cycle is certification of the technology to ensure consumers have technology that's gone through that rigor, and developing advanced manufacturing processes to both reduce costs and to meet the growing demand of this market. So we've added recently, we'll hear about our latest topic area, which supports commercialization of the wind turbine technology and market expansion to yet further reduce costs by accelerating deployment and meeting that growing demand. And here we see, some good news is that Northern Power System had focused on the European market for a while. They're back in the US now with this latest 2023 October installation way up in Prudhoe Bay. So it's a little sign of increasing activity in the market. The CIP is pretty unique as a DOE-funded NREL research program in that it's been around since 2012. Typically, these projects, they live a few years and they do their work and move on and evolve, but this has been such an impactful program that it's still going since 2012. We've had 10 solicitations since then, and putting out 64 awards to 26 companies across 18 states. That's almost $15.5 million of DOE funds going out to the companies, leveraging almost $8 million in additional cost share. We manage the projects along with the awardees through a defined period of performance as a subcontract, providing oversight and technical assistance where needed. As you can see from the timeline, way back in 2012, we just focused on innovation of components and manufacturing with 2 awards. But over time, the awards grew, and the little colored circles show the different topic areas. So we've had a good collaboration with industry, trying to tailor the program to meet the needs, and adding topic areas as we move along. And 2022 was a big year, making that programmatic decision to funnel funds to award as many as possible. And you can see it was a record year of 12 awards across 7 topic areas, funding about $3 million in projects. The technical approach is competitively selected a solicitation. We review their proposals, ensure there's cost share to meet those requirements. Pretty short projects, normally about 21 to 24 months of a period of performance to make sure that the projects are manageable in size and can be completed in a timely manner. Focused generally on higher TRL, technology readiness level efforts, but we do have topic areas ranging from prototype designs through testing, certification, and commercialization. We are technology, configuration, component, and application neutral for a broad range of distributed wind applications, but we do focus on that small and medium technology, so we do cap the wind rated power at 1 megawatt. So our long-running sustained solicitation process allows technologies to move through the cycle from the initial innovative concepts to a certified commercialized turbine system. So that's the goal. We're really trying to advance the products into that final stage of in the ground, spinning, making electricity. NREL works with awardees to modify or end contracts if it is determined that that original plan is not achievable. So we've baked in some flexibility there, and we have mechanisms to adapt to changes as they come. And we do have quite an arsenal of technical assistance from NREL and all the DOE laboratory system to help companies achieve their goal. And you'll hear about those capabilities in this workshop, not today, but and see if some of that is needed. And here we see X-Flow's vertical axis wind turbine currently under test at Windward Engineering's great test site in Utah. Looking at costs, it's really interesting how we've seen a steady decline in cost over this last 10 years. So we worked with a variety of technologies from below a kilowatt micro wind up to about 300 kilowatts so far. And the cost of energy from these systems ranges from 40 cents a kilowatt hour to a target of closer to 7 cents a kilowatt hour, depending on the size and applications, from battery charging to remote power applications. And compare that to Lazard's assessment of other power sources. Rooftop solar is about 15 cents per kilowatt hour now. Utility scale solar is a little under 3 cents a kilowatt hour. And the cheapest new power plant you could put in right now is a wind energy power plant at 2.6 cents per kilowatt hour. And really, this recent federal legislation efforts have further reduced installed costs through subsidies. Upwards of 90% of the capital expenditure can be covered in overlapping grants and incentives. But that has been tempered a bit by some short-term, some near-term supply chain challenges that has, made everything more expensive. But continue to look at cost. One great example of using CIP to its fullest and really taking an aggressive move to reduce costs of energy to remain competitive can be demonstrated by Berge Wind Power. In 2012, they were making their flagship 10 kilowatt Berge XL10, and they went to do, I think, just a system optimization around 2013, but ended up redesigning the whole turbine into a 15 kilowatt stall regulated machine. 2014, worked with Intergrid, developing new power electronics. 2015, certify it to industry standards. 2017, develop a no concrete foundation system, followed by a deployable application for the technology. And then recently doing some incremental improvement and optimization of their permanent magnet alternator. And finally, using our new topic area for commercialization, developing financing solution to expand their market. Over this whole process, they use CIP to double the power output of their flagship residential scale turbine, reducing the cost of energy by about 50% and getting it down to a very competitive parity with rooftop solar. We'll hear more about the topic areas in the next session, but we've the last round in 2022, we had these prototype design development, where we advance a prototype design into a final design. And then there's one to manufacture and install the prototype, another one to install and test the prototype. And then the original component innovation topic area, system optimization, certification for small wind turbines and large, as well as listing of components to electrical safety standards, manufacturing process innovation, and then finally product commercialization and market development. Not all topic areas have been offered for each of these cycles throughout time. New topic areas have been added based on feedback, such as in 2021, we added prototype manufacture and installation, and then last year, the product commercialization topic area. And here we see an interesting view of a 20 kilowatt EO cycle deployed in the Midwest. So some examples of projects within scope. Prototype designs, take advantage of those initial topic areas. Overall system optimization, looking at the wind turbine system and how to optimize a combination of components to reduce cost. Improvement of specific components such as inverters, blades, towers to reduce cost. All sorts of sizes, like I mentioned, micro, small, medium or mid-size, HOTS, VOTS, and some unconventional designs and configurations have been awarded. Also some non-turbine components for systems, such as the foundations or a new application for an existing design. Turbine testing is often used an effort that's funded partially by CIP awards, including prototype testing as they move closer to certification. Some small turbine certification testing, testing of maybe an inverter for electrical safety listing, and then type certification, a global certification of the of any size technology. And then finally, CIP money has been used to focus on manufacturing. Injection molding of blades to reduce costs is one example. Some of the past projects that have been received or proposals have been received that are outside of scope would be lacking technical merit, such as violation of BETS limit, insufficient preliminary work to assess the turbine viability or probability of success. So, you think it's a great idea, but you need to put in some preliminary work to show that it's ready and viable. Turbines that don't consider basic wind dynamics, such as something basic like changing wind direction. Not addressing significant topics identified within their proposal. In other words, an incomplete proposal will not score well. Only technical information is a website, video, or marketing brochure. Continues to be a red flag. That sort of goes back to not enough preliminary work to assess the turbine viability. Standalone component is being developed with no discussions with turbine manufacturers, turbines that are too big, companies applying that are not US based. More than one topic area included in the proposal, such as a plan to improve a component and then test the prototype and then certify the technology. You're crossing too many topic areas in one proposal. Proposals that do not match a specific topic area that is being solicited. Multiple proposals submitted into different topic areas for pretty much the same turbine that are really in essence conflicting. So that's hopefully helpful looking back at the past. We do realize things change as time moves on, so we allow some modifications of the project as they move forward. Some that would typically be considered would be a shift in project focused based on the initial project work, such as a different approach to improve a specific component. So if you're awarded a CIP subcontract, you work closely with your technical monitor for minor changes like this. And we realize that we should be flexible, and we are. Shifting between specific sub-tier vendors, project schedule to plan schedule changes for staffing and other unexpected challenges, we can absorb these types of changes. Other modifications could not be allowed, such as shifting work between topic areas, such as shifting from turbine certification to prototype testing, changing in a primary vendor, or a large change in project costs may not be approved. Scoring criteria is the bulk of the RFP file that comes out, and it shows clearly the criteria used to score the proposals. So it's this is just some past examples of merit criteria. So from component innovation, demonstrate that the proposed innovation is feasible, attainable, and consistent with the certification of the turbine. Demonstrates evidence that it will reduce cost, and you have a plan to introduce the change or update the certification, and you have a team that's capable of doing the proposed effort. And an example for a certification and or listing, show that you have a decent market share for your technology, the impact on the market, you're ready for certification, and you have a qualified team. So each of these is important to your final score. Some new DEIA elements in CIP, standing for diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility. We've had a great year of learning about this, and we've seen tremendous support from the federal government, moving these values down through many programs. So over on the right, why is diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility important? Well, in your company, it creates a very positive company culture that attracts high performing staff, and people want to work there when these elements are incorporated into the company. And as you're moving through this challenging distributed wind space, diversity really helps drive innovation. A team with different perspectives yields unique solutions. And then, looking at it from the federal government's point of view, where we're making bold initiatives to fight climate change, we're really creating opportunities to improve communities that have been historically underserved, which benefits everyone. For example, Biden's executive order created the Justice 40 initiative to establish a goal of 40% of clean energy and other federal investments overall benefits the flow to disadvantaged communities. So we've learned a lot about this from some of the subject matter experts in NREL, such as Nicole Mendoza and some subcontractors we're working with, like Heather Rhodes here today. So planned for 2024, for the commercialization topic area, if there are efforts to perform some workforce training, we see that this ecosystem of technical installers, operations and maintenance personnel has really diminished over the years and needs to be rebuilt in some areas. So those workforce training efforts should include DEIA elements such as cross-training, recruitment of diverse workforce, university partnerships and apprenticeships, and deployment-related projects in this topic area. We're considering adding the community benefit plans as a project deliverable to fully articulate the benefit of the distributed wind project in those communities. We also want to have the addition of to our scoring criteria here. Down under team, we're going to be adding company-based DEIA assessment. We'll develop this, include it in the RFP, and add it to the existing merit criteria for the CIP scoring rubric. And then finally, we've budgeted to provide some technical support for project and proposal development to women and minority-led businesses to increase diversity of CIP applicants via our subcontractor, Heather Rhodes. So I think Heather has a link she's going to put in the chat. She's nodding on her contact us tool on her website. That she's added a, are you interested in learning more about the NREL CIP tech support? So thank you for doing that, Heather. And as we try to route that support to women and minority-led businesses. And I see the chat number went up. I can't really see it, but I think it went in there. Thank you. There are additional program factors that affect about 5% of the total score. Manufacturer diversity is basically being supplanted by a new merit criteria, but the others remain: geographic diversity, system configuration diversity, CIP topic diversity, turbine size and type diversity, price participation, and a detailed plan for proposed technical assistance or support from the lab system. Good news is CIP is awesome. Bad news is CIP is very competitive. I use the numbers from 2021 because 2022 was a bit of an anomaly in that we made that programmatic decision to fund lots of projects. We received 34 proposals requesting over $7 million in total funding. 22 of those received a passing score of 7 out of 10. I'm sorry, a passing score, meaning the proposal met basic requirements, and the 12 were graded in the competitive range, meaning 70% or 7 out of 10. And then out of those 12, 8, there was enough funding to award 8 proposals. So out of 34, we were able to award 8. To develop a successful proposal, please address all the criteria, demonstrating you have a concept that has a justified path to certification, cost parity, and market impact. There's a few notes here and recommendations. If you make incredible claims, you've got to back that up, or else you lose credibility. Your team should demonstrate a full range of expertise needed to pull off the project. You don't need to be a wind turbine manufacturer to apply for a component improvement award, but you need to work with a turbine manufacturer so that your improved component has a place in the market. And keep in mind that most CIP's efforts do go through a pretty early stage gate of a go, no go decision, where we do a design review. For example, a prototype design development is only guaranteed to be funded through the design review. At that point, it could say the team could say this is not viable and receive a no go, and at that point, the subcontract would be terminated. Documented path to certification is critical to meeting the demands of getting into the market. And to get there, you have to understand the standards. So thank you for coming to this workshop. Other than some specific requirements, if you need something that seems to counter an element of the RFP, explain why you feel you need to do something different. We are open-minded. We really like to spend U.S. taxpayer money on efforts in the U.S., but cost share funds can be spent anywhere, so that's a plus. Any work that has to be done outside the U.S., please just justify that if it's not possible to do it in the U.S., such as maybe testing. If specific people are on your team, they should be part of the team and not just a list of all the subcontractors in the world. Okay. So we've gotten one consistent feedback is you spend a lot of time on a full proposal and it takes forever to hear back. That's because of the procurement process, and we can't provide feedback on your proposals until we fully executed all the awards, and that's takes a long time. So we're trying something new this year. We're going to send you a notice pretty soon and ask for concept papers, very brief papers that say, here's what we're thinking of doing, and we will read them and provide feedback. This sounds great, aligns well with topic area, makes sense in your product development, or some directional corrections like this is not a good match with your chosen topic area, you're not ready, your team needs help. Something helpful is what we're attempting here. It will also give us an indication of what the industry is planning as we get ready for the next potential round. So again, we'll solicit this with all the information and a template, but it's looking like concept papers must not exceed 3 pages, including all the graphics that you need to explain your project title, who you are, which topic area, a brief project description, what impacts the basic plan, and the team. So this is just a heads up of what you're thinking, not a lot of great detail, and will enable us to give you some quick feedback. Some impacts can include lower levelized cost of energy from the effort, improved installation or operations and maintenance, development of a new product, a new application for an existing product, turbine system certification, component listing to access target markets, commercialization of certified technology. So we're looking forward to hearing what you're planning, and watch for communication and information on the website about these concept papers. So here's a few links for later when you get this, the Lazard, the CIP website, the previous solicitation, and Justice 40. Thank you all very much for that overview, or for being here for that overview. There's Rocky using some prototype testing funds to test his turbine up on Beach Mountain, actually pretty close to here where I am now in North Carolina. And so I will say, do you have any burning questions before we go right into an overview of the topic areas? And I haven't looked at the chat, but I see Robert's hand. Robert?
Yeah, since one of the things that you're going to do in the preliminary is give people feedback on the applicability of the program area they want to apply for to what they're trying to do, are you going to release ahead of time what topic areas will be in the CIP this time?
Well, like to N's point, we're only able to show what we did last time, and I don't see any firm plans on changing the topic areas at this time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? And did I resume sharing? Great. Well, I'm going to go right into an overview of these potential topic areas, and we're going to have a tag team here of presenters with the CIP staff. And these are either technical monitors or folks that have been involved in the proposal evaluation team. And before I get started, did you have a question, Heather?
You're on
Can't.
mute, Heather.
Yeah, thank you.
I did put the link in the chat.
Thank
It's
you.
really just to express interest. If you want to learn more about the quote phase 0, quite limited support, possibly a few office hour kind of training sessions for people learning how to do federal proposals, NREL forms and paperwork, but specifically around DEIA topics. And I think we're going to have a little bit of a screening process for that as well, just to warn everybody that there will be separate from this concept paper, that if we have more requests for technical support, we'll probably be asking you some more questions about your DEIA track record, your understanding of it, and what plans you might have and resources for the future. So that's still in the works, but just wanted to encourage everybody to be thinking a little more about a lot of federal solicitations coming out are asking for pretty comprehensive community benefit plans, and to get more distributed wind companies geared up for other funding. It's a really good idea to start working on those topics and be thinking about how your work is going to be benefiting underserved and underrepresented communities. Thanks.
Thank you, Heather. And thanks to everyone for bearing with us as we pilot some of this new ideas in this NCIP. So I appreciate that. Okay, we're going to move forward with an overview of topic areas, and yeah, this is the same list of topic areas that were released in the previous solicitation, and this is our best guess at what would be next. We'll go through prototype design development, and Scott will take us through prototype manufacturing installation, Lee J through prototype installation and testing, then Ian through the two topic areas of component innovation and system optimization. I'll talk a little about small wind certification and or listing, Jeroen type certification and listing, Dave Snowberg on manufacturing process innovation, and then Heidi had a power outage, so I'm going to cover for her and talk about this new product commercialization and market development topic area. Just a reminder that, like we just said, these it could change in the future round. Views expressed or included in this presentation are supportive of historical CIP, may not indicate what happens in the future. Be sure and check the specific request for proposal topic areas when it comes out and the language received on the official RFP, including funding levels and cost share requirements. And reminder that these funding levels and cost share are limits, not requirements, so design proposals appropriately just stay within the limits. So these are the around 2022 budget levels as obtained from the previous solicitation link that's still live there. 200, and some of these may change. Prototype design development, 200,000, prototype manufacturer installation, 300,000, or this calculation based on the size of the turbine, whichever is less, for both the turbine manufacturing and the, okay, so let me slow down. 300,000 for the turbine manufacturer and 100,000 for turbine installation. You also do this rated power calculation to see whichever is less. For the prototype installation and testing, it's 250,000, or do the calculation, whichever is less for the installation, and then 150,000 for the testing. Component innovation has a maximum of 400,000, system optimization also. Small turbine certification is 200,000 for the turbine certification, 80,000 additional for load measurement based testing, another 80,000 for turbine listing to UL standards, or 200,000 total for an effort involving inverter listing. So there's a big or there. So you can do some and, but if it's an inverter listing project, it's standalone. Type certification maximum 800,000, manufacturing 500,000, commercialization 150. They all have 20% cost share requirements, except for the prototype manufacturing and the manufacturing process innovation, which have 50% cost share requirements. Okay, I'll start with prototype design development. It's our lowest technology readiness level topic area, and the scope of the work for this topic area focus on the completion of detailed analysis and design of beta prototype turbine or component to reach readiness for manufacturing of a production prototype. It's really taking the design to a final prototype design, where you can refine the manufacturability, the design for manufacturing of the design, performance, cost, installation, O&M, operations and maintenance, supply chain, and components in the process. And then the result is a ready to build prototype. There is a design review stage with a go, no go, giving opportunities to remedy problems found or brought up in the design review. And it's our topic area that does cover some unconventional concepts. On the CIP website, we have some project fact sheets for some examples, and I'll show one here. It's an example of the project from Accelerate Wind, which is a bit unconventional in that it's integrated for commercial rooftop edges, and it's a X-flow vertical axis rotor on its side with a spoiler to speed up wind as it flows across the building. And so the goal here is to spend this period of performance taking that prototype design, evolving it into a final design ready to build a prototype. And these fact sheets go through all the project elements, including the approach, the cost share, the partners, and the period of performance. All right, next we'll let Scott Dana come off mute and tell us a bit about this topic area.
Hello. You hear me okay?
Yeah, Scott, you sound great.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I'm Scott Dana. I'm a researcher here at NREL. I've been here about 10 years, primarily experimentalist in wind turbine technology, testing and validation, design of experiment, DAS and instrumentation, things like that. I've been with CIP, involved with CIP since 2017, I believe, which I think was the 5th round. So quite a few years managing awards, reviewing proposals, and also technical assistance, management and support there, which we'll talk about a little more later on in the workshop. So yeah, for this solicitation, we're talking about the manufacturing and installation of a prototype system. So really, we want to see the production of a full prototype system that's ready for testing. Ideally, it's really close to certification testing. We're looking for it to be pretty close to that point here. So a really well-developed set of design documentation is going to be required. We've got, as Brent mentioned, we've got the award maximum and then also the calculation depending on your peak power of what we will be willing to support here. Installation may be included. It's not actually required. It's it could just be the prototype manufacturing of the turbine. But if you want to include installation costs there in the proposal, you can. And a little caveat, I mean, we want to see an installation at a suitable site. So make sure it has suitable winds. You're not just going to put it up in your backyard or something. Ideally, even a test site. You're already working with a test site or certification body, and you're putting up your turbine there. The minimum price participation is 50% on this one. So keep that in mind. It was added fairly recently. And like I said, the lead into this ideally is that you've gone through what Brent just already described, which was the prototype design development contract, but that doesn't mean you have to have done that. We're just going to really need to see a full, complete production, design documentation. There is a go, no go on this one. I know it's not listed here, but there is a decision point pretty early on in that contract. Again, it's a design evaluation where we need to assess the maturity of the design, and we will review your calculations. We need to make sure that, yeah, this prototype is ready to move forward with actual manufacturing. I think that covers it, unless you guys want to add anything.
Just really quickly, the reason for the different minimum price participation is a DOE requirement based on the amount of capital equipment that is being purchased. And so the awards here that result in DOE helping to fund equipment has a much higher cost share. And that's a requirement under DOE contracting rules. So
Thanks, Ian.
please don't
And on the-
hesitate to jump in with questions as we go through each of these. You can wait to the end, but feel free to jump in if you have specific interest in one of them.
Absolutely. Okay, thanks, Scott. And as you can see, I put the couple links. The Sun site is working on focusing on the manufacturing of their, setting up manufacturing of their permanent magnet alternator, and Pecos is working on installing their prototype. Manufacturing and installing. Okay, thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
I don't see any hands, so I'll go next to Lee J to tell us about this topic area.
Hello, sound check. This working?
Yes.
Okay. I'm Lee J. Fingersh. I've been at NREL for quite a long time now, 30 years as of today, actually. And I'm a power engineer, electrical engineering, specializing in power, and I've managed some of these contracts. I think I'm currently managing 7, something like that. And what we're going to talk about today is prototype installation and testing, a subject near and dear to my heart since I spent, about 27 years doing installation of prototypes at the wind site and testing them and running them. And the idea here is fairly straightforward. You can do all of the design models that you want. You can order components, you can test the components. Once you integrate the components and put them in the field, you're going to find out all kinds of new stuff that you didn't plan on, all kinds of bugs to work out, whether that's vibration or corrosion or environmental or whatever. You really have to feel the system in order to find out if it works. So that's the idea behind doing this kind of a thing, fielding a prototype and learning a lot from doing that. It doesn't have to be installed here. It can be installed in many locations. You can see the award amounts listed here. There's a little bit of a formula there to figure out based on the size of the machine. There is a minimum price participation. There is also technical support available from NREL, both through the technical monitor and through the technical support area, in order to help you with analyzing data, doing installations, that sort of thing. And yeah, the idea here, like I said, is just learning. Most of the learning that's done when you put a prototype in the field isn't really very welcome learning, but you have to have it. You're not really excited to learn that your device is rusting or corroding or what, or vibrating or whatever, but you have to know that before you build 100 of them or 1,000 of them. So it's really important to work this out.
Thank you, Lee J. Any questions for Lee J? And the three, there's lots of projects going back through CIP timeline, but in recent years, we've been communications folks have been creating these one-page fact sheets so you can learn more about projects. So Windward and XFlow are learning about their prototypes at the Utah test site. And then Sunsight has completed their prototype testing, as we saw earlier in a photo from Beech Mountain, as has ducted from a previous award. All right, thank you, Lee J. Glad everyone gets to meet some of our CIP technical staff during this process today. Okay, Ann's going to take us through CI, Component Innovation.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for hanging in there. Just wanted to make one thing clear, and Brent has mentioned this a few times, but there's a whole bunch of these different topic areas, and they really are designed to go from early stage, not low TRL R&D. I mean, you have to have a design in mind and a plan to get to that design for that early prototype, but all the way through the deployment of the turbines in the last one. And so it is really the whole life cycle of a new turbine concept. And it's designed that way. But just to be really clear, you can enter it anywhere you are in this development process. So if you've already got a turbine that's gone through prototype development and you've done that, however you have done that, and you want to come in later in the game, that's perfectly acceptable. So there's absolutely no requirement to start at the beginning and go all the way through it. We want people to kind of come through it and engage where they can, and potentially go back through it a few times. And that's where this kind of component innovation comes in. And so the component innovation, as you can see, a lot of our awards is in this component innovation category. And it is an example of, you have a turbine that's operating, but you can make it better. And improve upon the design. And so looking at updating the blades, putting longer blades on it, or new blades, or high efficiency blades, or quiet blades, power electronics and new controls, a different tower or a different lifting mechanism to install the tower. All of these ideas are ways to have a product that is successful, but you need to improve it. You need to make it applicable in a new area, like in remote conditions in Alaska, or on islands or something like that. So you don't have access to big cranes or something of that nature. So looking at diverse communities and how your turbine technology can compete better, or you just need to improve something. You've had failures in your power electronics, and so you need to fix that problem to get your turbine more reliable. So in this case, the goal is for people to come and propose to innovate around a specific component and pull it through certification. So you have to have a turbine that you're working with, so a turbine you're working on. You come in and you want to redesign this component and put it into service and go through the certification process so that your whole turbine system is now recertified and so that you can sell it. So the component certification is included in this, but it does not cover the cost of a complete recertification of your product. And so Brent will talk to that in a little bit. So it's really important to engage with your certification agencies to understand how much can you change that won't require a complete recertification of your product. So we are looking and are open to people who want to do new applications to do something different with their turbines. And the Berge 2021 is a good example of that kind of a design where you're interested in looking at a new application for your turbine. And so we're certainly open to those types of ideas. The award amount is $400K and 20% cost requirements, because again, the expectation is that this is a lot of kind of research work to get to a final product of a new component. And then we have the intergrid inverter here as another classic example. We are encouraging entities that are looking for products like the intergrid inverter that could be applied on multiple turbine technologies. So it's not, you don't have to be tied specifically to one. You can have a product that can engage in multiple turbines, but you do need to identify a partner that you're working with specifically. What we don't want or trying to avoid is someone coming with a great new wind turbine blade or something of that nature, but nobody that they're partnering with. So we spend $400,000 to get this new nifty tower that no turbine manufacturer wants to use in their products. So that's why we really require this kind of tie to at least one turbine manufacturer who has agreed to use this component in their product line. But if you can get multiples, that's also fabulous, and encourage you to include those in proposals.
So Ian, just to like iterate, so let's say we are like a only turbine manufacturer or a generator manufacturer. So the tower tower manufacturing is not my company. So I have to show collaboration with someone already.
So if you're the turbine,
I can just say, hey, buying it off the shelf from anyone. And
yeah, so that could go two ways. One is you could apply as the turbine manufacturer and say you're going to innovate on the tower. And I think the 2022 Carter is an example of this, where they are working to build a new tower, a taller tower for their turbine. It could also be that the tower manufacturer submits, so you identify yourself with a tower manufacturer, and the tower manufacturer submits the proposal, but with you as a partner, with the turbine OEM as the partner. So it can go either direction, but you need to demonstrate that kind of clear linkage between the two organizations.
So what if there is already a tower manufacturer who already have certification or whatever they are? So can we like say we are using their towers and they don't have to submit or something like that?
Well, you would only submit an innovation is if you wanted to improve that tower. So, I mean, an example could be that they have a tower that's certified, everything is fine, but it doesn't quite fit your turbine. And so you need to spend a little bit of money to make sure that their turbine will work, or their tower will work for your turbine. And that would be a case where you could apply.
Okay, sure. And is there any way you can help us find a tower manufacturer, because it's a little difficult to find them?
Yeah, we can certainly help with that.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Brent, yeah, that's a good, and we would invite, that's a good cue there, Guru, to, we would invite tower manufacturers interested in distributed wind to join our teaming LinkedIn page, because they're a critical partner to getting your technology in the air. So thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. And guys, please try to fill the sheet as much as so we can collaborate offline.
Great. Brent, do you want to go to the next one?
Here you are.
So system optimization is a little bit different in that there are kind of a couple of different cases here that you can see that we've listed out, but here you're looking at a larger system. So component innovation is designed around components. So blades, power converter, something of that nature, which is very specific. And as I said, component innovation is the goal of that. At the end of that is to have an improved product at the end. So something that you're selling. System optimization is really trying to look at the full system or subsystems and come with a better design. But it's not expected under system optimization that you will have commercialized that new optimization effort, because a system optimization is more complex. You have more systems that you need to engage. It's not just replacing the blades. Now you have to do the blades and the hub and the drivetrain because you have bigger blades or something of that nature. And you're getting into a lot more kind of technical things that you need to worry about. And so this is a first step to be able to have you look at systems, see what needs to be improved and see what needs to be modified. And that could be followed by a component innovation to say, now we've identified the components that need to be improved. So there are kind of three flavors to the system optimization. The first one is taking a full system, and it's not listed here, but the Berge is a perfect example. He had the 10 kilowatt Berge. One of our first awards is the 10 kilowatt Berge was not cost effective compared to solar. So what do we do? And so through CIP, Mike Berge and his team was able to really dissect the whole turbine and come up with a completely new design, an optimized design that would lower the cost of energy. And that's how we have the 15 kilowatt turbine. Carter has looked at a whole drivetrain. And so that's the second part. So a significant improvement of the turbine subsystem. So in the case of Carter, they're really looking at the whole drivetrain. So new rotor, and then the impacts that is going to have on the drivetrain and into the power electronics of the turbine. So the Carter turbine is quite an old model, and they wanted to look at the whole kind of drivetrain system. But there were some parts of the turbine that they knew they didn't have to worry about. And so really focusing on that. And then the last one is the development of a new capability that requires a full design and of multiple systems. So this, an example could be, you have a great turbine, but it's on a standard crane mount tower, and you want to look at a tilt-up tower design, in which case you're going to need to look at the tower, you're going to need to look at the foundation, and you're going to have to look at the process of installation. So that would be another great kind of example of a system optimization. You've got a product, it's working fine, but you need to look at a different application. And so you dive into this kind of full system. As I said, it's really focused on the design and kind of getting into what do I need to do next. It's not expected to result in hardware, completely brought out systems. But if you can do that, fabulous. No worries about that. It does not require certification because, again, the concept is you're not building it yet, but the design should be certification ready. Again, $400K and 20% cost share.
Okay, any questions before we move ahead? Thank you very much, Ian.
Certainly.
All right, well, my name's not there, but I'm gonna do this one. Oops. I've been at NREL for about 3 years, but way back in 2009 through 15, I was part of this Small Wind Certification Council that was stood up by the Department of Energy to be a certification body focused on small and medium wind turbines certification. We saw some interesting things with non-certified turbines in the market. So the industry really got behind certification around 2010 and saw it as a really useful tool for eligibility for public funds, incentive programs to choose technology that has been vetted and tested and designed according to standards. So we have a topic area here focused on the certification of small wind turbines. We'll learn more about the evolution of US national standards applicable to distributed wind tomorrow, but this topic area has evolved into a focus on turbines certifying to the relatively new ACP 101 standard. This applies, these are turbines up to 150 kilowatts in rated are in peak power. And so there's a whole defined process of testing and designing to the standards and having a certification body grant certification of the turbine, making it eligible for incentives. The part of this, this is called and/or listing because the effort can also include listing the turbine or components to applicable electrical safety standards, which Joe will teach us about in the next session today. $200,000 award amount for this endeavor, more for loads, more for listing, or $200,000 for an inverter listing effort, which is could be the sole effort of this topic area. Planned for 2024. We'll hear about this tomorrow, but the standards are, on one hand, the standards are requiring the manufacturer to keep a close eye and provide surveillance on turbines that are certified and now deployed in the field to learn about their behavior and issues that pop up in the field. And the industry has really gotten behind to improving the monitoring of our fleet of distributed wind turbines to provide data to various users of the data, the service provider, the manufacturer, universities, research laboratories. And so we plan to add funds to this topic area to support the engineering and the setup of turbine monitoring systems to enable surveillance of these initial deployments in the field. And we've got a few fact sheets. Northern Power Systems is listing their inverter. So they're taking the solely listing route because they already have a certified turbine. Intergrid is working on their inverter. Star Wind is certifying their wind turbine, and QED is working to certify their wind turbine as well. Okay, any questions on small turbine certification? If not, we'll go right into type certification and we'll hear about that from Jeroen.
Hi, my name is Jeroen van Dam, principal engineer with NREL. Been testing turbines and writing standards for a little over 25 years, I guess. So this topic area kind of picks up where Brent's area ends, right? ACP is limited to 150 kilowatts. Traditionally, the CIP scope was up to a megawatt. So if you are between 150 kilowatts and a megawatt, you would automatically fall in this category. Or if you see other markets beyond the US and you would like an international certification, then you would also select this category. You may already have ACP certification, but maybe you see other markets open up where ICRE certificates have value. This would be a category to pick. And the third option could be, yes, you might be a small turbine manufacturer, but you want a more thorough certification, right? The IEC standards and certification schemes have more rigor to them, which some would see as a nuisance, other would see maybe as getting more value of a third-party review out of them. Here reference is ICRE. It's a conformity assessment system set up by IEC to IEC standards. So they have operational documents, and those are publicly available on their website. There is an OD 501 for basically any turbine that applies to any turbine, and so you could use it for any size. And there's an OD 554-1, which is for small turbines as currently defined in IEC-61400-2 for turbines up to 200 meters square meter square. And then, of course, there's also options to list components, things like controls cabinets, inverters, power converters. So rather than it could be UL, 6142, that could still apply to that, but it could also mean that you have other standards like 6141 or other UL standards for a larger size. So yeah, this is really kind of supplemental to what Brent had for larger sizes. We don't currently have fact sheets on this. In Brent's time chart, you see that this category was only, I think, selected 3 times prior. So it's not a category we see a lot of activity in. but we still have it. Award amount in the past has been a maximum of $800,000. This IEC certification is more expensive. It also limits you to what kind of test organizations you can use and what kind of certification bodies you can use, and then a 20% cost share in that. So that's everything on this category.
Thanks, Jeroen. All right, now we'll hear from David Snowberg.
All right, thanks, Brent. Dave Snowberg here. I've been working in wind energy for over 25 years, about half of that here at NREL and half of that in private industry. Worked at Southwest Wind Power for many years, helped with the SkyStream development before coming here to NREL. So this topic area here is manufacturing process innovation. So I'm gonna start just by highlighting the words in the title, manufacturing process and innovation. So this is about, not about prototype development. This is not about the different certification you've heard about. This is about manufacturing. So this is for where you're at the step where you're already manufacturing and you have a process and you want to make some innovation there. So example here of that picture of a tool, probably an injection molded tool for a Pico wind blade. So quite a bit of expense to develop the capital equipment for that type of tooling. So that's one type of innovation for manufacturing, to be able to improve your manufacturing. So important to consider here that this is not a prototype manufacturing. This is for your existing manufacturing operations that you have for your distributed wind system and making some innovation to that. So let's see. So this does have that price participation of 50%, as Ian mentioned, for capital equipment intensive awards. It does have a larger price participation, so that equipment that is being procured is owned by the awardee and doesn't have any ownership to the government, because that's not how we want to have these awards structured. Also, what else do I want to note here? Maximum award amount is 500,000, so it does have a larger award than some of the others you've heard about besides the type certification. So, and that is due to the large cost to make these types of manufacturing improvements. So all the words here are important. Reliable, safe, economic product, upgrades to the manufacturing equipment, considering your supply chain, quality control, all that is important. And with this category and with all categories, it would emphasize the importance of looking at the criteria. So when these RFPs go out, there will be very specific criteria of what's being looked at for each area. So pay attention to that when you're putting together a proposal. Let's see. I guess emphasize again that this is for existing products or the development of the manufacturing for a product that is already ready for manufacturing, not a prototype. And also emphasize the importance of domestic manufacturing. So, we certainly want these distributed wind systems to be deployed on domestic sites, but also, we want them to be manufactured here as well. So it brings it all together. So that's also an important part of this. And I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Any questions for Dave? Okay, thanks for that. Yeah, before getting into wind energy, I spent about a decade as a manufacturing engineer, and this always brings back good memories of the shop floor. Okay, one more, and then as we wrap up this session, we'll take a break. So thanks for hanging in there. Okay, our newest topic area, product commercialization and market development. Really, distributed wind is, getting your turbine certified is a huge milestone, but the next step is is commercialization of the product and making partnerships for increasing sales and all the work involved into deploying your technology and supporting it. And so the scope of work for this new topic area just introduced in the last round is focused on the development of markets for new products or existing products into those new markets. This topic area is targeted at helping small companies with the costs associated with the commercialization process. So it's not like we are the Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations funding large, expensive pilot demonstration projects. We're funding the costs associated with the commercialization product and developing a plan for the commercialization. And most importantly, the vision here was developing partnerships, enabling a pathways to large scale deployments. Last time the max award was 150K with a 20% cost share requirement, and 2 companies were awarded projects under this topic area. Bergie is working on financing to access more markets and bring down that barrier of coming up with the initial capital investment. And EOCycle is, I'll click on their fact sheet. They are partnering with large agricultural businesses to enable potential large-scale deployments. So, as they say, through this campaign, EOCycle expects to speed up the market for distributed wind energy by significantly raising awareness among some of its largest potential customers. We trust the campaign will create a snowball effect that contributes to a healthy economy and environment in rural areas. So they are, here they are installing their 25 kilowatt S series at a Nutrien Ag Solutions company. So they're really partnering with Big Ag to enable a commercialization of their product in this large scale potential market. Their technical monitor for this topic area is Heidi Tennyson, who couldn't be here today, but she says in creating this market development plan, EOCycle is leveraging its considerable technological and business expertise to help the entire distributed wind sector grow. This will be a powerful tool to communicate the returns on investment businesses can anticipate by employing clean energy in commercial applications. And so it's really helpful to get these large ag companies thinking about distributed wind. And as Heidi says, it's hopefully paving the way for larger scale deployments there. Okay, so just want to point out that the website, the CIP website, has a list of all these topic areas now. There also can be found in that SAM link on our website to the previous solicitation, but the website accordion buttons at the bottom also has a link to all the project fact sheets, so you can get an idea of some current successful projects that are underway. So you may have questions which you can bring after the short break we'll have, but if you have some really project specific discussions you would like to have, please email me and I will make a brief meeting for us to chat about it on Friday, as many as I can squeeze into Friday morning. That won't be all, we're around to help, but at least while things are fresh on your mind, I do want to reserve some time on Friday for any discussions you may want to have. Okay, so let's take a little break. On the East Coast, it's 3:36, so let's start back at 4:46, take a 10-minute break, and I'll see you back at 4:46 Eastern time, or whatever 46 where you are. Thank you very much. All right, 3:46 here in the land of the Eastern Cherokee, Western North Carolina. Had enough time to put some wood in the fire. One benefit of working from home is easier to keep the house warm on a cold, windy day. Before we go to our final session, we've got some time here where folks can throw out any questions about CIP overview, topic areas, anything else that might be a burning question before we get into listing of distributed wind technology to electrical standards.
I
Thanks for-
could post one, certainly, Brent. I did notice that there were a number of foreign companies that are kind of in the list. And so it might be worth talking a little bit about kind of the requirements or what have you around foreign companies partaking in CIP. So happy to dive into that if that would be of interest to folks. Or Brent, if you just want me to do it, I'm not sure what the time is. Joe gives a thumbs up. All right.
Yeah, I think we've got time. If you want to go ahead and do it, Ian, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's a good topic.
Yeah.
So, so just to be clear, we are certainly interested in foreign companies partaking in CIP. There is nothing against that as part of CIP. There are some contractual issues. So NREL, through this kind of contracting, cannot contract with a foreign entity through CIP. So you can be a foreign company, but you have to have some sort of US corporate presence that we can implement the contract through. And we've done that a number of different ways. So a company operating in the US, or even an associate company that has a US corporate presence that is then partnering with a foreign company to be able to implement that. One of the recent projects with EOCycle is an example of that. It's working with what used to be the Exant turbine. And we implemented that contract or that partnership with Exant, and it was through a US company working with Exant to look at their turbine. The key is that we have to demonstrate benefit here in the United States. So obviously, we're not going to spend US taxpayer money on a company in Tunisia that is building turbines to be installed in Uruguay. There's no real benefit to the U.S. taxpayer to support something of that nature. But if you're this company in Tunisia that has a U.S. presence, but the whole plan is to bring that turbine and deploy it here in the United States and create jobs here in the U.S. and potentially, if the market takes off, to do manufacturing here in the U.S. At some later point, then that's clearly a benefit to the U.S. taxpayer. So that would certainly be obviously completely hypothetical, but that would be a kind of a proposal or a project that would be of interest for us here. We do kind of request that, to the extent possible, the funding is spent in the United States, but again, that's not a requirement. And as Brent indicated at one point, just so long as you can justify that some of the money is being spent in other places, that's fine. And you just need to state that in your proposal. The more that can be applied to your cost share, the better. But in this case with Exant, a lot of that design work is happening in Belgium, and that's perfectly acceptable. We just need to talk through that. The one kind of condition that we do call for, though, is that if you're going to be doing turbine testing, like certification that Joe is going to dive into, that certification work happens here in the United States. Again, unless you can document that there's really no other way to be able to do it, or it's going to be a huge cost to be able to do that. An example of another one that was similar, that kind of gets to this foreign issue, is where we have a contract with SEVA, a project with SEVA to look at blades. And under that, we initially had planned for the blades to be manufactured in the United States. But after some discussion with SEVA, it turned out that the cost of doing it here was just much, much higher than doing it in India, and in which case we came to an agreement, and the projects and the blades were produced in India. So we're certainly willing and available to kind of go through those dialogues with any foreign entity that's interested in, again, impacting turbine sales and turbine of all classes, airborne, vertical, what have you, here in the United States, and that's the goal. If you have any questions about this before and you're thinking about submitting, again, there's another great opportunity to reach out to Brent and myself and the CIP team to kind of talk through the scenario, and we can bring in our contracts people, Kendall, to make sure that we're covered and we're not going to run into an issue before you start working on the proposal. So again, happy to dive into that with any company that would be interested in doing that. The key is just in the proposal, just make sure you're justifying work that would happen outside and really focusing on what the impact is in the United States from the result of the project as compared to the work that's happening just in pulling it to market. So happy to dive into any more of that if that would be helpful to anybody.
Yep, good.
So it's a possible that like if I'm trying to like start from the scratch, so let's say it's cost effective to manufacture or design things in India, and once it is done, obviously the installation or like everything will come into the US. Like when we commission any project, the final output or the product is installed in US. So it's really helpful if we can make that prototyping and manufacturing in India or in China, and then can we submit the project based on that assumption, like, hey, now based on like what I heard, we can even go in tower manufacturing now. So if we can do that and prove that ability in India, that hey, we can manufacture this fully product grade, commercial grade product in India, but we're gonna install or sell it in US. So that is possible under the project submission.
Yeah, without getting into specifics, but generally speaking, yes. So I might caveat that a little bit to say something like, again, depending on where you are in this development process, and we have all of these different tasks, but having the turbine manufactured in India or parts coming from India and China, but you're planning to prototype test it in the United States or put it through certification testing in the United States.
Okay.
So part of the project would have to happen in the US, though not all of it. And then you would have to, in the proposal, you would have to articulate that your goal was to deploy these in the United States and eventually manufacture parts of them or what have you. But it's two-part, the work that's happening and then what you're doing with the result of the project, how that impacts US taxpayers and the US distributed wind market.
Okay, that's good. Thank you.
And again, we're happy to get into your specific project in more details at any point.
Sure, thank you.
Ian, just this is Trond Sorensen, Norhybrid in Norway. We definitely is in that category, have ambitions to set up a US entity and kind of drive it from there, but may not be time, etc. So I really appreciate you bringing up this topic. Is there any links here that could be useful with some of the more guidelines on this, or is this better to do a conversation like you suggested?
It's probably good to do a conversation. I would certainly encourage you to pull the documents from the last CIP, including there's a whole bunch of contracting requirements, kind of contracting fine print that are part of those NREL contract documents. So you could certainly look at those. But I think before, it would probably make sense to just have a conversation to kind of understand what you're thinking of before you spend too many hours yourself or your lawyer spending too many hours delving through brainless contracting documents. But I think that would be helpful. And then a conversation would be good.
Yeah, very good. Thank you so much.
And thank you for staying up so late. It's not early there. Yes.
No, no worries. This has been really helpful and really interesting. So thank you guys for setting it up.
Certainly.
And we will have Kendall Jackson here in the workshop Thursday to
Thursday morning.
Answer more questions around the contracting specific issues.
Yes. And she's here to make sure that Brent and I don't end up in prison. But she's always very negotiable. So
yeah.
Um,
Great. Thank you, Ian, and for the questions. I am getting a couple emails for requests for meetings, and I will set those up. So thank you for doing that. So let's stay on schedule and let Joe Spossey inform us about this wonderful topic of listing. You've seen the word listing in a couple of our topic areas. So what is that? Tell us, Joe.
I'll try my best. Hope everybody can hear me all right. I'll keep my video up for now, but then we'll probably drop so I can get my face off my screen while I'm talking to everybody here today. Thanks to DOE and NREL for inviting me to talk today. And I mean, what a great program overall, right? From top to bottom, from the beginning, so thanks to everybody at NREL and DOE for continuously improving and continuing this program into next year. And like I said, having me here today. So today I'm here to talk to you guys about certification of distributed wind technology to electrical safety standards. My name is Joe Spossey. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the CEO and lead expert for renewable energy innovations. We are a team of design, test, certification, and product development experts. We specialize in identifying a clear path to certification. I heard Brent say path to certification a couple times today, so I really like that. In fact, I've got it here, so thanks for that, Brent. But right, that's kind of our initial MO, right, to identify that path. What are the gaps, how to bridge those gaps and be a compliant product. We also independently evaluate products for compliance with certification and perform the testing. We're not a electrical safety certification test organization. We do provide field testing for the ACP side. I'm not talking to you about that today. I'm here to talk to you about electrical. But my background a little more, spent a decade at Intertek, was technical manager for their wind turbine testing and certification teams globally. I've got approaching 20 years of wind turbine related experience, accreditation, international standards, ACP, IEC, certification, testing, advisory sort of background and experience. Participate as a volunteer in many standards committees with Mr. Summerville and others here today, and considered an expert at establishing third-party customer test sites. If you've got your own location, we can establish customer compliant test facilities. I guess I'll also mention briefly, I do have quite the background in CIP. I've been participating in CIP with my time at Intertek and now independently at REI since round 2. And then also I'll just kind of, before I dive into the specifics here, this is a very high level conversation today. And I'm going to go ahead and drop myself out of here so I can start to see my own screen here. But, this is a high level conversation today, and just stay tuned and keep aware and in your inboxes for an NREL and REI co-published guideline for our best practices document for certification of distributed wind turbines in the US. So this is kind of just scratching the surface today, and then hopefully there'll be, shortly within the next month or two, a public document that'll have a lot more of the detail that relates to the topic today. So today, hopefully able to help everybody learn a little bit more about and understand what's required for distributed turbine electrical conformity and why. We'll discuss some applicable codes and standards, including 6141 and 6142, the primary applicable codes for wind turbine systems. We will also look to identify some common components and requirements very quickly. And then along the way, hopefully we can take a quick look at some of those potential upcoming CIP topic areas that may relate to electrical conformity overall. go. So let's see, since we last met, let's see what's new. I suppose the last workshop was, let's see, December 21. Dr. Rob Wills would have gave a presentation, and that workshop and presentation is posted on the NREL site, the same site everybody's been sharing and directing you all to, so you should already be familiar with it. You can find some older information there. Here, we've got some similar info, some updated info, and some new insights that we've put in there. We're gonna, see new requirements or new info for National Electric Code, some similar conversation around IEEE 1547 and kind of the same discussion with product conformity in 6142, but just, some more insight there. Go over some of the updates to National Electric Code since last. The current edition 2023 of the code would have been published and released. So this is now the latest and greatest. No major changes since 2020 for Article 694 for wind turbines. So that no major updates there, but we will still cover it today. And then also some updates on 6141 and 6142, which we'll talk about more. 6141 was completed October last year. 6142 is ongoing under the standards technical panel for 6142. Talk about those, as well as the perpetually updating IEEE 1547 and NEC adoptions. Look at kind of state maps and how that's going, and then also go over some clarifications for UL 1741, kind of the interactive options that are available, and talk about all these things today. And there's a Rockies turbine there on the right hand side as well. You've seen pictured a couple times. We did some helped Rocky with some electrical advisory and conformity, as well as the testing of that prototype unit at Beech Mountain. So before really diving into the specifics of what it is, we like to talk about why. Product certifications are useful for many reasons, but primarily related to ensuring quality and mitigating risks. The compliance drivers are generally split into two main areas: permitting and local regulations, and then eligibility for rebates or incentive programs, which electrical conformity isn't really a part of. The rebates and incentive programs don't prescribe National Electric Code or UL standards, for example. It's more the ACP 101, so we won't talk about that today. But in general, certification is always useful as a baseline of product quality and mitigation of typical risks for the type of product in a given application. With use of established industry codes and standards, there's a establishing of a minimum level of quality through that certification process, and of course also useful in early concept stages or proof of concept stages of the design to ensure you're sort of headed down the right path. Electrical permitting in the U.S. Is governed by adoption of the code, which we'll cover a little bit more in a minute. And really the easiest way to talk about it is just to kind of visualize the maps. We'll look at those. And of course, after you've made it through and you got a compliant product, now you've got export markets that will have similar requirements, similar product requirements for different components, system or interconnection requirements, et cetera. This is a summary, if you will, before we dive into this. And this is the so-called three-legged stool, if you will, or you may have heard it referred to or seen some variation of this same slide in the past. On the left-hand side with National Electric Code, which comes down to enforcement by local authorities having jurisdiction, AHJs, and the various applicable parts and chapters of National Electric Code, Article 694, applying to wind electric systems and others as applicable, typically 705, but sometimes 706, 710, 712. Then on the right-hand side, the other two legs, the product conformity requirements defined in the standards, the codes and standards, 6142 and 6141. And then those maps, which we'll see, again, more blown up versions in a minute, related to interconnection requirements. And local utility and adoption state by state or by service operator. And generally those are going to always be some form of UL 1741, IEEE 1547, and the .1 testing. First, National Electric Code. Let's take a look at that quickly. It applies to a wide range of products, basically anything connected to the electrical network via cord, receptacle, or panel, or meter, etc. So for wind turbines, this is, as I mentioned before, Articles 694 and 705, others as applicable. The code itself is broken up into general sections, chapters 1 through 4, special sections 5 through 8. That's where the wind specific items are. And just note that anything in the special sections overrides text in the general sections. There may be conflicting or similar or different requirements in the different chapters, and those in the special sections will override those in general sections. Many of the same items and topics that are covered in National Electric Code, such as wiring, wiring methods, or grounding, are also found as prescribed requirements in the applicable product standards themselves. So therefore, it's generally always advisable to use off-the-shelf certified components, where possible. And then specifically 694 under National Electric Code, Article 694 applies to wind electric systems, but also just, to show on the left-hand side and a reminder, the link on the bottom there to show kind of NEC adoption as of July. Article 694 of wind electric systems requires all components to be listed and labeled, or approved or certified, whatever you wish to call it. UL 6141 and 6142 are specifically referenced in National Electric Code as the applicable system standards for certification of wind electric systems. The section of the NEC applies to the turbine system itself, the various parts and equipment, diversion loads, controllers, surge protection devices, receptacles, if they're there, use of raceways or wiring practices or methods, and worker clearances, in addition to others. Interconnection requirements come from Article 705 with specific reference to IEEE 1547 and 1547.1. And then again, looking at the map there, you can see anything in purple or white would be 2020 NEC or newer. So that's 31 states, which is basically the latest and greatest, right? As I said, nothing really has changed in Article 694 for wind turbines or wind electric systems. So that's, a majority, of course. And as you can see, this list doesn't, go back to the beginning of time. It's kind of a rolling time frame. So eventually the other states will catch up. So obviously it's simply suggested to focus on the latest and greatest. And then another view of some other maps related to the interconnection conformity side of it now, the other side, or one of the other legs of the stool, if you will. And again, simply and easiest to understand via use of these maps and reference the requirements reference from UL 6142 clause 9 is where the specific standardized requirements are. This information is taken from that link in the top right. It's a presentation from EPRI, which is about a year old in this presentation at this point in time. But it's really just to give you an idea. Again, similar to that NEC map, right? If you see kind of the color coding, the yellow on the bottom right, the purple and the top left, those are kind of the ISOs or the states that are kind of requiring that latest and greatest. You'll see some similar, states as the previous map. So again, it's not usually advisable to develop a product line or separate product lines for separate interconnection requirements in the US. So, still suggesting to focus on those areas that are more strict. I did also stick a note in here about reference to UL 61800-5-1, which is allowable for the device itself that provides the interconnection to the utility. UL 61800-5 replaced UL 508 in both UL 6142 and UL 6141. The reference overall was replaced by UL 61800-5. And so this is okay to apply for, risk of general electrical safety, but it will still require you to have that same interconnection conformity requirement with reference to IEEE 1547. So that's more just in lieu of UL 1741, the product may comply with 61800-5, but that's a device specific sort of comment. If you're using a quote unquote inverter, then the appropriate standard is UL 1741. Now to the final part there, the third leg of the stool, if you will, diving a little bit more. We're going to dive a little bit more into 6141 and 42 over the next couple of slides. This really just highlights here a couple of points, major points. Certifications for UL 6141 and 6142 can only be issued by OSHA accredited, nationally recognized testing laboratories, NRTLs, with 6141 or 6142 listed on their scope of accreditation, right? That's important. You can check this link. You can see the standards that the NRTLs are qualified for. And if you see 6141, 6142, you're good to go. If you don't, it's common. Not many of them are qualified for that, but many are qualified for the individual component standards, like the UL 1741 for the inverter, or the 1004 for a generator, or that 61800-5 that I mentioned. You know, those standards are common for many NRTLs. It's more the system level 6141 and 42 that you have to pay attention to. Also, a major point here, if you're not aware, then you are now, that you can digitally view UL standards for free, right? Shown in the bottom right there in the search bar as a search result on my screen for UL 6141, there's that icon, says digital view. Click that button, set up a free account. And many of the standards I'm talking about here today, I reference here today, are referenced in that best practice guideline. You can view for free right on your computer screen. Some are not available, but many, I don't know, at least 95% of them are. There's just a couple that aren't. And then lastly on this slide is really just to highlight the process. It's going to go through the same, whether this is a component or a system sort of evaluation. Either there's always that initial desktop or critical components review of the pieces that make up the component or system, then the full-on detailed constructional evaluation for compliance with design and constructional requirements in the standards. Then comes type testing. Once type testing is complete, you'll have sort of tying everything together, final evaluation, certification reporting. Based off the back of that certification report, a factory inspection is performed to verify that you're building the same product that is tested and evaluated. Then you go through labeling and final receipt of authorization to mark or certification, right? And then you enter surveillance and maintenance. Then you've got to maintain it, you've got to keep it up, and go through sort of follow-up and surveillance process. Another important thing to understand is that there are various levels or types of certification. And so we're going to talk about a couple of terms here. UL 6141 and UL 6142 certifications will be known as, or what's known as third-party classification listing of a wind turbine system, right? It's a listing of a group of components or sub-assemblies that on their own do not make up a complete system, right? You need all these pieces and parts to make up a wind turbine system to comply with 6141 or 6142. That is a classification listing. Components or sub-assemblies will typically be referred to as a recognition listing. They may also be a classification if it's a system of components or an assembly. Could also be classification, but recognition listing, right? Not to play favorites here, but right, everybody you're familiar with the UR mark. That's the UR. That's a recognized component. Many of these are subcomponents, but often for distributed wind turbines, and distributed turbine applications, and for compliance with 6141 and 42, some of the major components themselves undergo a recognition listing to afford themselves exclusions or kind of an easier path, because there are other protections in the system to handle those requirements of the standard. The easiest example of this is UL 1741 with inverters and controllers. How the full breadth of the standard is applied as a listing to the inverter, and controllers would go through a part of an evaluation, and parts are only applied unless it's a recognition. Field labeling is still allowed for a single installation for a single label, single turbine. You generally still have to go through all the same requirements, if not more, because it's not proven or evaluated. And it's always just that sort of, one use, one label sort of approval. It does not classify as a certification or a listing. Sorry, it does not classify as a listing. Really, I'm not going to go crazy into 6141, 6142 details. The main point of this slide is to highlight the similarities. And the 6141 does have in it some higher voltage limits. So there are some additional and higher voltage standards that are referenced for product conformity. But in my opinion, these two documents could be one. It could be the same with only an additional clause in there for service personnel safety, which 6141 being turbines permitting entry and 6142 turbines not permitting entry. The requirements, if you go to find the requirements for alternators and generators, it's going to be the same in 6141 as it is in 6142. And look, circle back, you write 6141 is entry of personnel, where this is fully entering. This is your entire body. You are entering at the base of the tower, inside the tower, climbing inside the tower to the top, which maybe is a external platform or inside in a cell, but for a period there you were fully enclosed, fully entered into something, or maybe you're climbing externally and then you have to climb inside the nacelle fully. That's entry. If you're standing on a platform and reaching into or putting your hands into small openings, that's not entry. That's 6142. Those are small turbines. I will also note, if you're a larger distributed turbine that permits entry but are interconnected in a distributed generation application, I would still advise reference to UL 6142 clause 9, because 6141 doesn't have utility grid interaction requirements in it. That was a industry suggestion, if you will. So if you are a larger machine that permits entry and you are connecting to the grid, I would still refer to 6142 for that specific set of requirements. This is just a list of common wind turbine and subassembly sort of components and applicable standards. This is taken directly from UL 6141 and 42. If you go to these parts of those standards, it's going to say, wind turbine inverter shall comply with UL 1741, right? It'll be short and sweet. In most cases, in some instances, there are additional requirements in 6142, which I don't have listed here. For example, like for slip rings, there isn't a reference to an external standard. It defines the requirements in 6142 or 6141 specifically for slip rings. But you'll see, common, 6141, 42, the -1 and -2 design standards are referenced, UL 1004 motors and generators, 61800-5 motor drives, adjustable speed power drives, 1741 converters, inverters, controllers, and a few others there as well. Now, this slide is extremely overloaded. The point is not to read through it line by line. I know this is recorded and shared, so you can refer back to it. But let's talk about a couple of these things quickly. These are just some additional considerations or things to understand related to electrical conformity. Now, you have some options with inverters related to interactive types. There are 3 options currently identified in UL 1741. Utility interactive, grid support, utility interactive, or special purpose. Utility interactive being the old school 2003 method, anti-islanding, disconnect, get out of the way, right? That's still acceptable, but you have to, classify as such, and there's certain labeling requirements, et cetera, or grid support, utility interactive, the newer method, where you ride through the outage, support the grid. This is UL 1741 SA or SB with the latest IEEE 2018. Or special purpose, which is defined by the OEM or defined by the utility. Maybe you've got a specific application that you need to comply with, usually remote or extreme sort of environments, but can be defined by the OEM and would be labeled and identified as such and verified, by UL for compliance. This is something you would kind of need to check with the local authorities and make sure it was suitable enough if they're not requiring 1 or 2 specifically, for example. I get asked all the time, are PV inverters okay? And generally, yes. The answer to that is yes, as long as it's classified appropriately for your application, right? Utility interactive grid support. It's got the appropriate listings, and you're using it appropriately within its ratings, inputs and outputs. So you may have to add some piece of equipment between the generator and the inverter. So you may be adding another element to your system that's not listed or proven. So that kind of complicates the overall system. But yes, you can. Again, piecing that together with approved and certified components is always advisable. We're doing okay on time. Alternators, generators, and directly connected machines, some notes there. Generally, they all directly just, require UL 1004. The main note here is relation to the certification of the installation system. It's the common misconception that you can just kind of, as long as you're procuring or using installation system components that are appropriately rated and certified, that complies with the set of requirements in the standard, but that's actually false. The entire system of components has to have been evaluated as a system of components in those ranges of operation and inputs and outputs, and be certified as such. Now, you may only be using parts of that system, and that's fine, but you physically need a letter from the OEM of the installation system that says you're using it in this sort of application, and it falls under their product listing. There's relation here to temperature testing, which is probably the most important test for an unproven generator to understand winding temperatures. If you're below 100 degrees C, you've afforded yourself some exceptions in the standard, and you don't really have to worry about it so much. I'm not going to focus too much on the other items here. Safety related control systems, clause 8, we're currently updating. You have some options on how you can approach this. I think the certification bodies prefer you to have kind of a approved software, and you or myself, might prefer to just test it out. Both are acceptable, but if you build this immaculate or all these controls and protections, right, then we have to test them all, right? We have to prove that they all work. So that's kind of a double-edged sword. And obviously with careful planning and identifying that path, understanding what all the design and test requirements are, I can't emphasize enough. So quickly then, just to wrap up, let's talk a little bit about CIP topic areas that were mentioned earlier. This is just a real brief sort of view of what I view as kind of potential electrical conformity elements under some of these potential topic areas in the next solicitation. Under prototype design, early stage system design for compliance, but supplier qualification, we talked about suppliers and components, being able to qualify suppliers and ensuring that you have that product that's ready to build. Component innovation, system optimization are perfect for electrical related scopes and tasks. You heard Ian talk about and give some examples there. And then of course the certification and listing sides themselves, right? You saw the budgets. I think it was like 80K or so for the overall electrical system, add 200K for inverter, et cetera. But those are, that's where you go when you're ready to certify, right, the system. You can do the overall system certification. You can do components under that system certification as well, right? Your 6142 might include in it a generator and a controller certification as well, right? And then manufacturing process innovation could also, if you're savvy or, I think you're looking for ways to improve and reduce costs, could also be an area for electrical. And then those items I have crossed out there, I don't really think are typical for electrical scopes, product commercialization, prototype manufacturing and installation, but the prototype installation and testing isn't always electrical in scope, but you could include some electrical testing for commissioning and interconnection and things like that in there as well. We'll see those, again, those are just my ideas. So, we'll see what Ian and Brent have to say. And so, I'm asking this question, why CIP for electrical? And this is just something I extracted from, something I put together before just to try to show and estimate approximately the cost and timeline for electrical elements and certifications. This figure on the right is a little bit skewed. It kind of assumes you have all these things in your system, but you can get the idea, you know, on the overall cost of a certification. If you want to get into actual dollars and cents, you know, that's something we can help you with and understanding, but this is just to kind of visualize. And then, you know, the timelines line up, right? They talked about 21 months or so, right? All of this can be done in that timeline. We'll point out the inverters, obviously at an 8-month there doesn't fit in the 6-month overall turbine system timeline, you know, but usually the turbine system OEM isn't also building and designing and certifying an inverter. They purchase that off the shelf. So that element isn't a part of the overall time. But if you need to do that, you kind of have to add this overall time to that, but would still fall under typical project schedules. And that's everything I really had. I wanted to try not to fly too fast. I took up my full time allotment here, so hopefully I didn't go too quick. You know, we covered all these things, but if there's any questions, we can cover those as well. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome, Joe. Thanks so much for staying on top of all this. And as it's you know, pretty fluid and requirements vary and standards change. Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing what you know.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, and thanks to you guys at NREL for that separate sort of subcontract that REI is operating under for that development of the distributed wind turbine certification best practices guideline that you'll see sometime late this year or very early next year.
Yep, very early next year, probably.
Any questions or concerns? I'm happy to take them now. I know we're running short on time. You can always email me or reach out separately.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thanks so much, Joe, and thanks everyone for sticking in. I know I taught at the university here at Appalachian State for 5 years, so I know we've probably filled your brains up after 2.5 hours. And so I'm glad we got through today's big chunk. And we look forward to resuming tomorrow at the same time, where we talk about standards, testing, test sites, and design reviews tomorrow. Ian, you have any final thoughts, or anyone have any final questions?
No final thoughts from me, but
Okay.
available for questions if people have them.
Mhm.
Sounds good.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you tomorrow. If you have any problems or anything, just reach out via email, and if not, we'll see you at the same time, same place. Thank you very much.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Everyone.